Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome back to the Long Term Podcast. I'm your host, Advin Villa. Today, we have Wade Robichaud. We will discuss Wade's early years, the importance of mentorship, and the art of conversation. Everyone, welcome. And I'd like to add that Wade is my mentor. He's when I first started working at this company, he was one of the people that really helped me out when I was younger, 4 years back. And yeah, he's a great guy. Welcome, Wade Robichaud, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, Evan, when you reached out to me, to be quite honest, I was a little bit shocked because I thought, I'm not really that interesting of a guy, so to speak. I've lived a good life. Turned 40 last year, so I was kind of reflecting a little bit on turning 40 and the challenges of and trials and tribulations. I call it the trials and tribulations of growing up and sitting down, and I was starting to reflect, and I didn't really journal before, and a friend of mine actually kind of encouraged me to journal and do some very light writing and kind of hone that sort of craft a little bit. And so I started doing light journaling, and it was interesting the thought process that we're going behind that, starting from when I was very young. And I don't really have a lot of memories from when I'm young, but there's certain things that I remember happening to me when I was younger, like that scar that's on my eye. I know it. I can recount exactly every detail as to how that happened, including the doctor visit, the whole 9 yards. But certain things I couldn't remember. But some of the things that really stuck with me from my childhood was kind of realizing that my parents weren't necessarily my real parents, and kind of leads me to the fact that I was adopted. My kind of parents dropped that on me a little bit, when I was a kid. And
how old were you?
I think I just went into junior high, so I think I was 13 or maybe 12 or 13, just out of sort of elementary school.
How did that make you feel?
I think it actually had a massive impact on the rest of my development, because I felt lost a little bit. Growing up growing up in the 80s, 1983 I was born, so I experienced growing up in the 80s and growing up through the 90s. But through school and through all these other things, having that bomb dropped on you, it's hey, just so you know, we waited until you were mature enough or understood that, mom and dad aren't necessarily your mom and dad. Your mom and dad actually, we don't know who they were. I should say they know who my mom was, because she wrote me a letter, but she did ask that I never try and make contact. It was sort of a wiping their hands clean of me. Sad. But at the same time, my birth dad, no one knows where he went. No one knows, really anything about him. So
did you feel unwanted?
I felt a little bit frustrated, and I felt maybe I, did I deserve to be with this family? What exactly led me to getting adopted? And it's an interesting story. My parents grew up in the East Coast in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, and Moncton, New Brunswick, and that's kind of where they kind of were. And they moved out west here. And, through, spare you the details on that, but they obviously couldn't have a kid. So they really wanted to have a child. So they reached out to Catholic Social Services, and Catholic Social Services, put them through sort of a rigorous amount of trials. If I want to call it that. They had to become Catholic. Mom had to get baptized. There's a whole thing behind it.
There's all these requirements for them to be able to adopt you.
She was Protestant. She was Protestant, and my dad was Catholic. So she had to be baptized Catholic. She couldn't be Protestant. Before Catholic Social Services would allow them to adopt, they had to do a certain amount of, things to make it apparent that, I was going to be raised in a Catholic household. That was very important to my dad. Very Roman Catholic. So I was raised very Roman Catholic.
That's an incredible story. I mean, rarely do you find people that are adopted, and there's a narrative that seems to get put out there where it's shameful. That's probably why you felt disconnected when that was dropped on you. And
they waited a bit too long. Okay. Like what do you think would have, you probably would have felt better if they had told you earlier.
I think, going back and reflecting on it and talking to my parents now, even at my age, saying like, they even felt that like they just didn't know when it was going to be the right time. And my sister, for that fact, she's also adopted. Yeah. So they couldn't have kids at all. So they adopted a boy and a girl. But my sister and I are actually 6 years difference in age. Wow. So I was adopted in 1983 and they adopted my sister in 6 years from them. So like 1989.
And what do you think would have changed if they were your real parents? You think you would have felt more connected, or did they?
I think nothing maybe would have really changed. I think that just, I don't think that I would have been mature enough to understand why my birth mom gave me up. And there's a whole letter that my birth mom wrote to me that my parents never read. And it was specifically to be given to me like when I was ready to read it. And so my parents actually gave that letter several years ago. And I remember reading it. And, my original name before it was Wade was Patrick. So that's kind of, I was like, oh, interesting. Okay. I'm like, yeah, I could be a Patrick, I look like a Patrick,
mm-hmm.
But I like Wade, it fits. I like Wade too. It's become me, I've really embodied that name. It's not a very common name either, which is great because I'm, not everyone's the same, and it allows me to be and drive that uniqueness in my life, sort of carefree and sort of, go with the flow. And I think that's kind of where my parents were going, was like they wanted to make sure that I was mature enough to understand the concept behind adoption and what it means, and some of the challenges that are placed upon, say, someone that's giving up a child. They didn't want to drop that on me at too young an age because maybe I wouldn't understand. But I did understand in grade 7 when they dropped it on me. So understanding that and learning about that. And then it gave me a chance to like learn about adoption and understand a little bit more of like who I am and what my place was and like, why am I here? It wasn't necessarily that I felt disconnected or unwanted by my parents. What it did is it gave me a profound sense of hope that someone cared about me enough to take me on as their own.
Yeah, if you don't mind, if you could go closer to the mic.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm so sorry.
The people that do adopt, right, and they love the child as their own, are remarkable people. I was pretty much raised by stepmom as well. I was separated from my mom when I was at a very young age, moved here in Canada, and I was loved. I felt pretty close to my stepmom, and I'm a firm believer now that blood doesn't really matter. It's what you instill in the kid of love and compassion and how you make them feel, because there are kids out there with their biological parents who do not feel loved. I was talking to this girl and she just hates her parents. Just the parents don't understand her. She doesn't understand her parents, and it's awful to see just the disconnection there. And did you feel that way at all with I'm sure like going through your teenagehood and rebellious stage?
For sure. Going through, I think that we all go through that stage. We're always going to go through phases in our life as we're trying to, discover who we are. I would always, my dad, owned businesses. So he owned a couple of companies, really successful entrepreneur. But he also traveled quite a bit. So, he was away. And then I was kind of raised mostly by my mom, because he was always working or something like that. He was always around, but there were been bouts where he wouldn't be home. So I actually have a stronger connection with my mom than I do with my dad. My dad and I've always kind of been at odds. Like he never really understood. I feel like he never really, and still maybe to this day, never totally understood like who I was or what like my creative side, there's a unique side of me that like I feel like he just never really totally supported and like understood. I have ADHD. So I've always suffered with ADHD, and my parents, when they found out that I had ADHD, they were quite apprehensive to like medication. They wanted to take an entirely different route on treatment. So one of the challenges, that they tried to overcome with me was like, there are things that I was clearly just not into, but that's why I wasn't doing good in those subjects in school. Horrible at math. Horrible. Like, it's tragic how bad I was at math.
You just can't sit still.
I couldn't really understand it. And it didn't enrich me. Like, it didn't give me any, it wasn't like challenging, or it didn't spark something inside of me that me like, yeah, I should pay attention to this. But like social studies or history, on it, like graduating, crushing the departmental, right? Language arts, LA, English, crushing the departmental. Physics, science, also horrible.
Were there any significant events or influences in your early life that shaped who you are today?
I think, like significant events. I think just like generally understanding who I was. I think I was coming to like this realization. I really had to dig deep. I didn't know who I was, and to be quite honest, there's something else that I don't really tell a lot of people, and that was for a part of my life. I think this specifically may have actually been the pivot to who I've become today. And this might like maybe shock some of your viewers or listeners, but I actually spent a little bit of time as a Scientologist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
A Scientologist.
I
heard about Tom Cruise, and my friend had discussed how it was a
L.
cult.
Ron Hubbard and all of their unique
Can
teachings and stuff.
Describe what that was like?
So because of my ADHD and because of my parents were like trying to find a space for me to have a better learning environment, they reached out and they found a school. There was a private school in Edmonton, and that school was called Progressive Academy, and it was very unique there. Their style of learning. There's grades, but it wasn't really grades. There was classes, but it was different styles of classes. It was very much sort of, I think, focused on like the L. Ron Hubbard teachings of like learning how to learn was a book that I had to read. And it was like, I wouldn't say like it's not like necessarily indoctrination that a lot of people think that Scientology is, but and we're not going to go down that. Like we can do a whole other episode on that if you wanted to. But for the sake of this episode there, Evan, I think that was the first time when I joined that school that I felt that I was a part of something. Like I felt right away that I'm like, oh, I'm being welcomed here. Like the teachers are actually like very aware of my learning challenges and sort of how I need to learn. The students that were there were all not necessarily like, I'm not going to say they're all special needs because they weren't. It was very much of a unique style of schooling that you couldn't really find in the public or Catholic school system.
This was a school that was based around Scientology.
It was a Scientology sort of funded and sort of based school. So we did learn about Scientology in the school. We did read a lot of L. Ron Hubbard books, like a lot of them.
And you mentioned connection. You felt a part of the community, and you were confused as to why these kids were so welcoming. And that's kind of the reason why people join cults, why people
Absolutely.
are adopted into these organizations where maybe their values are questionable. It's because they have leaders that are charismatic, and the people there have instilled in them values that everybody else connects to, and it makes it feel like one. And that's kind of what cults and just organizations, they play into your emotions. And like a lot of businesses, that why they succeed is they make you feel a part of something. They make you feel in one with the group, that you're not just alone, that you're not going through all of this chaos alone. There's someone you can go to. But then if it's a malicious leader that has a hidden agenda, that's where it can get catastrophic.
This school didn't have, like, they had a headmistress, and I do not remember her name. Outside of sort of the negative things. And this was, I was going to Scientology and being part of that. So I want to preface this with saying like this was a Scientologist like style school, really based on the teachings of L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology.
So what's kind of
in
the
the
main
school system?
What's the main beliefs in Scientology?
So I never got ultra deep into that, to be quite honest. So where the story kind of goes is like, I think that the more my parents realized that we were part of Scientology, and this was before Scientology was known as this thing that it is today, but the more they started to influence and like push their ideals onto my parents and onto the family, it was like, you can't watch TV anymore. My parents had to change a lot of like what they were doing and how they were like, so it was like welcoming. And then it started to change. And
Start
like,
to ramp up in requirements as to
like,
what you needed to do with the
you
kid.
need to donate more to the school. Okay, well, there's the tiers of Scientology that we know of now, right? So you need to donate more. You need to do this. You need to start coming to church, being more part of the community. Went through, several years of school there. And I remember like sort of one day, I just didn't go to school there anymore. And it was like, you're starting school in the Catholic school board again. So it was like a few years and it was like, now you're going back to regular school. And it was like my parents' way of like realizing like, okay, like the only way I think to do it is like to completely like cut. I could have gone all the way through and graduated, through 12 because it was part of the legitimate school system. Like it was recognized. But I think the cost of, losing our religion, the cost of losing who we were to become Scientologists was too great for my parents to understand. And I think they started to learn a little bit more about that. So it was just, almost like a snap of the fingers. And it was like, boom, now you're going to regular school.
Did you notice a massive difference with the Scientology school versus a normal school?
Yeah, because the classes were more regimented. There was more conversation. The way that Scientology school was run, like a way that like history and language and things like that were done, like, the papers and the grading were a little bit, were like not a little bit, they were way different. But sometimes our class was like, we're going to the museum today. And we'd spend all day at the museum. And that was like school for the day.
Wow. And it's
like,
probably supporting the agenda of the business that's funding that school.
Or something. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. And be like, hey, we're going swimming all day today. And I was like, there was no like defined gym class. There was no like defined classes throughout the day. It was like, this is your home class. Your home class is many grades. And we're doing things as a community, as a class. So we'll learn and teach all sorts of different things. So I probably learned like way more. Weirdly enough, I felt I learned more at that school than what our current school system was teaching. It was like when I go back there and grade someone was like boring. Like, can we go and like, mountain climb or something like that? Like we would do all these things. So we'd be like, for like sort of our gym class one day, it turned into like, we went to like vertically inclined and like we learned how to like rock climb and belay and like do like knot tying and all sorts. It was just like, it just wasn't the standard curriculum. When you go back to, the public curriculum or the Catholic curriculum and you've got like, math class, social studies, language arts, health, gym class. Those things, those classes were just sort of boring. So then I did actually, to be quite honest, like I was doing good. Going back into the system, my grades started to fall again because I wasn't able to learn the way that was best for me. And that's what that school did. So looking back though, that school allowed me to realize how I needed to learn. And so I had to adapt myself and make those classes more enriching for myself. So I would come up with different stories or I would come up with a different way to absorb the material. I wasn't very good. I just don't like reading books. I would actually like read a book and fall asleep reading a book just because it's not like entertaining to me.
I've talked to a bunch of people with ADHD, and they say the same thing. You just can't sit still. It's because, especially for men, we were designed to get after it. I mean, we're soldiers back then, and if you look at evolutionary theory, we were cavemen and we were out there hunting, and just we weren't designed to sit down. For a lot of people to just sit still and learn. And there are other ways to learn that stuff.
Totally. Yeah.
Like more people are visual, more people are auditory. There's so many facets that you could take. So what the school system does is it selects the people that can sit still and just grind for hours on end. Meanwhile, the people that can't do that are dealt the wrong cards.
Yeah. Get dealt a blow that just, unfortunately, it's counterintuitive to like everyone's style of learning, for sure.
What were your hobbies and interests as a child, and how have they evolved over time? And you had mentioned you're a very creative person, and I noticed that through your account, and you want to instill positivity, and you like to travel and photography.
Yeah, I love it. It's like, you know what? I want to like hold back and be like, I'm not a professional photographer. I just like taking pictures. Am I a creative person? There's so many variations of what is creative, I think there's too many definitions of that nowadays. Like, you're a creator.
Yeah.
I'm a creator, but creativity is broad spectrum. And I think too many people are trying to like focus and be like, you're only a creator if you're on Twitter X, you're a creator. If you're on Instagram and you're only doing this, you're a creator. If you're on YouTube, you're a creator. But what about all the other things outside of those social networks where they demand a certain thing? You're only popular on the channels if you're a creator, so to speak. There's so many creators out there. I'd argue
that everyone is a creator in their own. I mean, the relationships you build, construction, even the signs, the content, the conversation, and we're going to discuss that later on. Everything is about creation. The opposite of that is destruction. So that's hate, that's evil, that's resentment, to break things down. But the thing with creation, being a content creator, being any creator of any type, is it's so difficult to build it all up, and it takes seconds to just crush.
It could take seconds it could disappear in a snap of a finger. I never wanted to call myself a creator. I think I struggled with that. I had like an existential crisis. Because I'm influenced, because of my ADHD, I look at things and I kind of say like, oh yeah, I want to really try that. That'd be fun to do. I could do that. But what happens is I start hopping around to different things because it's the new thing. It gets me really excited, but then I lose focus on something else. So to be quite honest, there's a trend in my social networks. Really intense engagement on Instagram, and then I've lost engagement because I found Twitter X and I started something else on there. But admittedly, I find it hard to like dial into one thing because I just love doing lots of things. But I never wanted to be. I think I always wanted to make sure that I was at arm's length. I mean, like, I'd never want to be a poser. And I think that I started to like really get into that space where it's like, telling people like, hey, just be careful. Don't be a poser on there. If you're going to, practice what you preach. Then I found myself like weirdly like buying into this world where it's like, okay, there's a certain formula. These hashtags, this type of content, this, posted then yield results. And so I became obsessed, and I lost like the passion behind taking pictures and the passion behind like posting motivational content because I became overly obsessed with like fine tuning, like how can I get just more likes or more impressions or more of this?
I run into that problem.
And so like, I'm like, okay, wait a second. And then I stopped and I was like, you know what? F this. Like I'm clearly like not, I got to take a break. Then I just fully disengaged from it. And then I found something else to do, and I tried that for a little bit. But then then that vicious cycle continues. What's always stayed constant though is, I'm just a guy who knows some things and wants to drive positivity and put a smile on people's faces. And I make people laugh, great. If I can tell them something new they never knew, great. If I can help solve a challenge in their life by giving them a different perspective, great.
You had mentioned existential crisis. Now, is this common for you? And is that why you constantly switch between projects? Because, is this really my niche? And so you follow a different route. I was passionate about this. Now I am passionate about this now. And so you jump in. Now, is that rooted in questioning your existence, your purpose?
I think it was. And I had a very good, I had a sort of like a, I don't know, eye-opening experience, I suppose, where I went through a very serious bout of like depression and sort of extreme anxiety. And I was struggling to understand like who I was, truthfully, Advin. I was
and when was this?
I was popular, I wasn't going to say popular. I was a likable guy.
You still are.
Put a smile on my face, and I always wanted to bring that, but behind the scenes, I never really showed anyone that I was like sort of damaged a little bit. I was trying to carry all the weight of all the problems and try and figure out all the solutions for everyone's problem. But I never gave myself time to feel out what I had a problem with. And I think that existential crisis was like, wait a second, I'm doing all these things, but who am I really? Like, I don't want to be that poser. I don't want to be someone I'm not, because the longer you pretend to be someone, the easier it is for you to forget who you really were.
When did you realize this?
When I came to this realization about 18 or so months ago, just kind of past COVID, I had kind of had like this breakdown. COVID really changed a lot of things, changed a lot of people, but my wife losing her job, and then us, just having to reorganize and understand, okay, like how do we live this life now where like you're not working, you're on, the supported income from employment insurance. I'm the only one bringing in the money. It shouldn't be about that though. It's not very like wife and husband, we equally have a share in fulfilling and driving the household. And I've always supported my wife in doing whatever she wants to do. But through that though, we all change, and I became, I had to like really change who I was. And the weird part is like, I used to be quite of a little shy kind of guy and a little bit more reserved, but I sort of, my wife helped me come out of my shell a little bit. And she's like, just be you. People like who you are. And she kept encouraging me to be like, who are you really?
Wait, everybody loves you, man.
Yeah.
You bring a good energy to the table, and anytime I've ever interacted with you, I've always just felt genuine connection and compassion. And the price of that too is you forget what you want, and you prioritize other people's feelings. You prioritize their problems, that you forget you're human too. And I have been like that as well for not as long as you, because you have gone through it for most of your life.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a period where I really honed in on empathy, and I really wanted to tell people, hey, it's going to be okay. And what are you going through? Tell me about it. I want to listen. But I did that so much that I forgot to take care of myself. Like, how am I doing? Like, they didn't ask, like some friends did, but I didn't really want to talk about myself. It was always about them. But it's that prioritization of yourself, because at the end of the day, you matter. And sure, everybody else matters too, but you need to ensure that you are okay first before you can go and help other people. And how has your wife helped you?
Oh, she's helped me tremendously. Very supportive too. She knows I'm a unique cat. She always comes, she's like, you're a unique cat. You're a different kind of cat. I said, oh, I appreciate that. She knows that I care a lot about people. In fact, I care more about people than I do my own well-being. But she's really encouraging me to like take that time for myself and like wade time. And she calls it wade time. Like, make sure you take wade time today. Like, do whatever you want to do. I don't care what it is.
What does that entail?
And that entails, she's like, you want to go play video games and like disconnect and like whatever. And we just, we kind of separate and just, I get my space. I just go and get lost in a video game for a few hours. 100% supportive of that. If I want to just sit outside in the yard in silence, she's very much supportive of that. Because she understands, excuse me, she understands kind of the signs where she can tell that I'm getting a little bit full. And that's mentally exhausted from constantly being this locomotive energy of just good vibes. But sometimes those guys, those types of people that drive good vibes all the time, like, we just get tired.
Do you find you suppress your emotions?
For sure I do. Yeah. When I get when something really bothers me, what happens is I just become quiet. I just don't deal with it. I just okay, I get it. I'm annoyed by the situation. I don't want to engage. So I'm just going to choose straight up silence. I'm just going to lock it out of my mind. And if I just ignore it for a while, it'll just go away. And that's not necessarily like how you solve problems. So I've learned to communicate a lot better as well. Because my communication would just stop. If I was upset with someone at work, I just wouldn't communicate with them. But that's not really the right way to go about it. And I was realizing some of those challenges are like, oh, wait a second. I'm starting to this is starting to affect more than, more things. So I had to really dig deep and say okay, wait a second. I took a big pause and kind of came, I took I always take these gigantic holidays at Christmas time. So I take 40 days off work and just completely decompress. But it was during one of those sort of sabbaticals, if you want to call them, where it's I had to sit down and think what am I doing with my life right now? I'm successful. I don't like to talk about myself. That's the problem. I'm successful. I've ran a pretty good career with the company I work for. I'm on to a different career with a new company that realized some of the potential they could, the potential in their company if they brought me on board. So that was something that I did, where it's I drove and built a reputation for the last 16 years with the one company, but that reputation didn't require an interview to get hired. It was we know who you are. We know what you do. We want you to work here. So there was no an interview required. But outside of that, though,
they looked into your background and they saw that you were capable.
They see who Wade was. It's not the job, because it was the relationships and the reputation I built in the industry as being a pretty nice guy. Nice guys don't always finish last. I can tell you that. That's fake news.
So now how do you deal with prioritizing yourself? So, you still care about people. You still want everyone else to rise with you. But now how do you go about situations where you are feeling a bit antsy and you need to let it out and you need to be a little bit selfish sometimes, because it's only balance.
To be honest, I think actually it goes back to the social media stuff. Where it's I can tie a lot of it back to okay, the things that I want to do is I want to explore these types of things. I want to be, do I really want to be a famous influencer? Absolutely not. I don't know if that would be that's not necessarily fulfilling to me. So prioritizing me time or prioritizing how I can do my self-reflection or maintain my mental health is I kind of keep it fluid. And that's sort of the way that I've learned to live my life. And I think that has to go back to when I had that sort of crisis of saying I was so locked in to trying to control all the outcomes and all of the things, became obsessed with it. And I was talking about obsession earlier, and that's sort of part of that ADHD was I was trying to, okay, I can schedule this, control this, I can control this, I can control this, I can do this. But what I came to the realization was it doesn't matter how much you plan and how much you put into it. Like shit just goes wrong. And you just have to like go with the flow.
You deal with it when it comes.
Release control. Release control of the things you truly have no control of. Don't worry about those things and just focus all your energy on the things that actually like you can fully understand and fully control. Can't control the weather, so why get upset at it? You can't control the outcomes of an election, so why get stressed out and anxiety about it? You can't control, again, we can with votes, but if your party doesn't win, like, you know, you can't necessarily control that.
Your contribution to it is such a minute percentage of it. And focusing on what you can control is all you can really do. Sure, there's these catastrophes, wars, hunger all over the news. And what if you're just an average guy? You're making average pay and you feel like guilty. You feel that you should be doing more. You feel that, okay, maybe you're insecure about your hair, your heights, your looks. These are all things that you can't control. What can you control? That's a great question. Okay, you can control going to the gym, your diet, your relationships. And over time, you can get to those things that do create more change, that do make more of an impact than just obsessing about it doesn't create action. It's the steps that you take to it every single day. And yeah.
So I tell you, when I was 38 years old, I was the heaviest I've ever been. So we're talking. So let's talk. So we're going to talk about. So if you to going back to the point of like profound moment in my life where I think I actually like fully changed the direction of where I was going to go and what I wanted to do, was looking in the mirror when I was 38 years old, knowing that I was turning 40, and deciding that like I didn't like what I saw anymore. And so, and the frustration part was, you know, my wife would always show me a picture of when I was in high school, and she's like, this is the guy that I met. She's like, you know, I'm never telling you I'm going to love you regardless of your weight, but I can tell that you need to do something because you're not happy with yourself. And I said, no, I'm not. And so I actually was always on and off in the gym. I never really worked out. I always had a pretty good metabolism, so I didn't really pack on that much weight. But then I realized that I was starting to pack on weight because I was depressed, I was stressed out, had high anxiety, would stress eat. And I would pack on pounds. And I was like, never really like, I'd look in the mirror and just sort of like lie to myself that I was okay, but I wasn't okay. I was 270 pounds. And I just, you know, I think I decided like sort of one night, I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to get serious about this. I want to control how long I live. I want to feel better. I don't want to be out of breath as much. I want to maintain my youthfulness, and I want to get some of that energy back that I had. And the only way that I thought about doing that was I got to go to the gym. And so I played with the gym a little bit, you know, trying to figure out like, do I need a personal trainer? Do I not? As I started to work out, I actually realized I really enjoyed working out. Like I enjoyed that like sense of camaraderie in the gym. I paid for a personal trainer because not because I necessarily would need it all the time, but I liked that sort of that gym partner. I knew I could do the workouts, but I liked hearing that encouragement. I guess maybe that's like my love language or something like that, because like I like that words of encouragement and things like that. So that's sort of why I was, you know, I think I've always kind of paid for that personal training. But going through that transition and seeing the kind of results that I could put out. And I had never thought about myself as being very strong or very athletic or anything like that until all of a sudden, you know, my trainer stopped me and, you know, like maybe these are like, you know, smaller numbers, but you know, he's like, you're doing like deadlifts, 365-pound deadlifts for like 5 reps at a time. She's like, you know, that's not light.
That's awesome, man.
5 reps at 365. You know, yeah. He's like, then you think about your squat, you're doing like 335, 345 for 5 reps on that. Like that's great too. Like you have to give yourself the credit, allow yourself that celebration. Cause he could see that I was like, oh, but that also kind of got me really more motivated,
That's awesome.
So now I'm dropping weight. I was 270 pounds, 18 months. 18 months was the transformation period. I went from 270 pounds to January of this year. I was 210 pounds.
That's
Went from
awesome.
a 40
Congratulations.
waist to a 32 waist, dropped 60 pounds. Like it was.
You found this activity that you were passionate about.
Yeah.
And you just honed in on it, showed up every day, and the numbers kept going up.
Yeah.
And you saw this transformation in your body and how and now you feel better overall.
Is there still work to do? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
yeah, of course. And it's never going to be perfect.
It was patience that I was missing, Edvin. It was patience that I didn't have. And I think that's what I was going to encourage people. I want people to be ambitious. The people that I was talking to, it's like, hey, I love that you're ambitious. You've got these great plans. Got to slow the expectation. You got to slow the roll on it. Like, be patient. Own the craft. Continue to practice, whatever. And it will come. But just don't rush it. Because you're going to rush into failure. Because you're not going to get the reaction or response or views or likes or clicks or impressions if you rush things.
Good things come to those who wait.
All good things come to those who wait.
All good things.
Right.
You rush things, it's not going to be right. And when you become impatient, you'll say things you don't want to say. You'll do things that you didn't want to do, but out of the emotions that arise from these hot moments, you're made to do them. And so it's good to just take a step back and go for it.
Those intense moments where you're just like...
Yeah. And let's talk about the importance of a mentor.
Yes.
Who were some of your most influential mentors and what impact did they have on your life?
Through all the conversation we've had today, Advent, starting fairly somber about my adoption and things like that. I've met a lot of people over my life and have a lot of influences over my life, teachers, things like that. Being a mentor, I never really saw myself as a mentor until someone told me that, like, actually, you're a pretty good mentor. And I never really thought about myself as that. I was like, I just help people. Okay, well, that's also mentoring, just helping people, just guiding them along. So I would say there's a couple of people that were like influential in my life. There was one gentleman who was a little bit older than me. It was weird. I've always kind of had older friends. And this one guy, Gordon Bird was his name. We worked together at EB Games when it was, when in fact it was like Electronics Boutique actually before it became EB Games and now it's GameStop. Wow. Right. So that was during my younger years, like sort of 2000 to kind of 2006. I worked at a movie theater. So I was sort of like a corporate trainer / sort of like junior manager, whatever you want to call it at Cineplex Entertainment or Galaxy Cinemas. And I also had like a second job at the Sherwood Park Mall. And that was at Electronics Boutique where it became, EB Games and stuff. But there was a guy that Gordon Bird was there and he was one of the employees and became sort of boss. And, I think he really helped me understand and build my confidence up because I was I was confident in the right scenarios. I look back at my life and I think of these like situations that I've been in and it's like I definitely can really sort of dial in and say I feel like meeting Gordon Bird when I was sort of 18 years old had a massive influence on who I've become because he allowed me to sort of become confident in, he always encouraged me. He's like, why just not say what you think? He's like, I say what I think. Do people always like it? No, but that's their problem, not mine. I want to have an opinion, but I'm never going to force the opinion and I'm never going to be derogatory with the opinion. I'm just going to voice my opinion and be equally, reciprocal of accepting and understanding everyone has different opinions.
We often think of mentors as these people who are ultra successful in business, in the athletes. And what you find out is the mentors could very well just be McDonald's employees. And when I worked in the ATS traffic, the rentals department, Kim was just someone who I looked up to a lot. And I would have never thought that this old lady would, would cause such a positive influence on my life. And she's so sweet, and I love her, and just the stories that she's given me and the values. She's amazing, incredible person. I saw her today, and I always ask her for advice. And she's awesome. So it's that guy you worked with,
Gordon
at EB
Bird.
Games?
Gordon Bird. He really quite seriously influenced. He was very into audio and visual and speaker systems and sound, and like really liked video games and really liked board games. And up until that, like, did I like to play video games? Yes. I love PC gaming. I love playing Xbox. It was a thing, but like he allowed me to like, and opened it up so that I became a little bit more familiar with like sort of what audio is, sound systems and fidelity and like hertz and how to, really tune and like sort of a presentation. Because we worked at the movie theater, I sort of also sort of assigned that of like, until I started working at the movie theater, I don't think I really understood who I was. And then when I started there, it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. I know sort of how I'm going to lead my life now. I was, I think I became a little bit more confident. I kind of grew into this guy that you see here sitting next to you today doing this podcast with you. I mean, I've allowed myself to grow because of some of the influence that Gordon gave me. And he's moved away, and I have probably not talked to him in years now. But that's kind of feel like that's sort of the MO of mentors. They're in your life for a very specific amount of time for a very specific reason, because you need that. It's almost like a meant to be, and then they move on.
It's often the people that you don't seek out are the ones that become your mentors.
Yeah.
They're the ones that just pop up out of nowhere and tell you something just profound, and you take that, and that's the way you live your life. And I have worked at many fast food restaurants like Subway, Panda Express, McDonald's.
Wendy's, you work there?
No, I didn't. Oh, no. Have you?
I worked at Wendy's, yeah.
But there's some Filipino immigrants, and a lot of them have double, triple jobs, and they just work like dogs, 12, 16-hour days, barely any sleep, still come home to take care of their kids. They have an entire family, and I see them still on Facebook making time for family events. And it really just made me realize how much of a lazy teenager I was. Because here I was showing up to my 4-hour shift at McDonald's and me complaining, when this woman is on her third job with another full time, and she's also like cleaning out this building. And that's common in Filipino culture. And a lot of these women have been of great value to my development. And when I think of just difficulty, I think of how they get through what they, the work ethic that they've put out. And I often ask them, why do you do this? And they go, for my family. And there's just so much value in asking questions to the people that you really look up to, and you can find them anywhere. Yeah. How do you define a good mentor, and what qualities should they possess?
So, going back to Gordon, I think defining a good mentor, Gordon was very empathetic and understood, but also wasn't afraid to give hard truths. And I think sometimes, when we're friends with people, it's hard to give a hard truth, because you don't want to offend them, or you don't want to upset the balance of your friendship or things like that. But I think that you'll find better friendships and better relationships if you're willing to accept the hard truths that your friends tell you.
Criticism.
You have to accept criticism.
My one friend always critiques my podcast. Hey, the audio here is shit. Hey, the lighting, the video. And I could take that and I could go, please stop the criticism. You're just hating on me. You're
Yeah.
shitting on me. Go away. Or I could go, okay, what can I do to resolve that? Can you give me more feedback? And you could kind of tell if it's feedback where it's rooted in hate.
If it's feedback for like sort of feedback's sake and there's no real sort of weight behind it, then I'm,
you have to choose the people that you do consider
exactly
friends and people that do support you and want to uplift you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, to go back to that, Evan, though, talking about, what defines that, like, there's Gordon Bird, who was one of my mentors at a younger age. There's also like Luke Johnstone, who worked at ATS, and he actually helped transition me from sort of that junior level that I was at to where I grew into at ATS, and then now into the next organization I work for. But he also really profoundly changed my vision and my version of who I was, because he allowed me to, and he encouraged me to continue to be me. Right. So he's like, when we're out and doing conferences or meeting new people, or I was doing an education session in front of 100 people, he would always encourage, he's like, don't read the notes. You know what you're talking about. Just go out there and educate them. Don't worry about the notes. Because the second I always have notes, I always screw it up. I always try and like follow it so that I don't sound natural. And he's like, then you sound like you're reading your script. That's not the way that I know that could educate this way. Do it this way.
You are a person that's just quick, and you can come up with conversations that are enriching and that do add value. Yeah. And I feel like adding script would inhibit you, because you just get too structured, and that's not Wade. The Wade that everybody knows can just conversate without putting too much thought into it, and it flows. And
I try to. It might be a little bit disjointed. It goes all over the place, but that's just my mind.
Well,
but
the main message is there.
The message is there.
Where you get back up from the trials and tribulations, and you want to instill positivity, and you want to spread love and compassion, and you want, what's up?
Oh, no, sorry. Totally.
Yeah. And there's all these things that you're interested in, but the main message is clear, where you just want to add good to the world. Yeah.
Just want to be positive. I just want to drive smiles and good vibes, and no pressure, no problem. Just live a good life. I mean, like, hey, didn't work out.
Yeah, I honestly viewed you as a mentor. When I was my first year at ATS, I was a very confused kid. Low confidence. I didn't really know how to go about the world. I met you in the kitchen, and you're just very upbeat. And then I saw you at the gym, and you're very accepting, and you never treated other people lower, even when their position was lower, or they come from a different background. You treated everyone equally, and you made them feel heard. You made them feel like themselves. And I feel a lot of people do not have that, and you have instilled that in you. And was that always the case?
Ivan, I don't know. I think, probably it probably was, and I never realized it. And I think I suppressed it for a long time as well. But at the end of the day, I've always actually just cared about people. Everyone, I never, and then that came from my dad. And my dad really instilled this into me. And he was like, you always treat people like people, regardless if you're the CEO or you're the janitor. Like my dad, he was a CEO, owner of 2 businesses, very successful businesses. But he always came home and he always told me that one thing. He's like, whenever you are in business and when you get to that day and age, when you're running people, or if you're ever in charge of people or whatever, you always treat people just like people, regardless if they sweep the floor or whether they're your vice president or your salespeople or whatever. Just make sure you treat them always with respect and always at the same level you are.
That's the premise of this podcast.
Yeah.
I accept everyone. And I think that McDonald's workers and multi-billion-dollar CEOs are people. Maybe one worked harder than the other one, but we are constantly working towards something. Maybe that McDonald's worker just wasn't focused on wealth. They were focused on video games. They may be really good at a video game. Maybe they read a lot of comics. Maybe they're super knowledgeable when it comes to Marvel. There's something that they're good at. Maybe they're a really loving brother, a really loving son. And at the same time, I don't think the CEO is actually happier. It's just the same level of happiness with these two people, and it's all subjective as well. And
for sure it's subjective, right?
Can you share a story about a time when mentorship significantly changed the course of your career, personal life? Or was that kind of covered with EB Games and ATS?
I think, it's a little bit covered by like the Gordon Bird, scenario with my friend there, like really helping me understand who I was. And I don't even think that I've never really ever told him how influential he was.
You should, man. You should reach out to him.
Never like really said like, hey man, if you're watching this by some weird way, I want you to know that like you're massively influential in my life and who I've become. And the same thing with Luke Johnstone, also helping me like understand that like Wade's secret sauce is that it's being Wade, nothing else, just embodiment of who you are and your energy. That's what people want to see and hear. And that's why, and he's always encouraged me. He's like, that's why people immediately trust you. You know how to talk to people.
You're genuine.
It's a genuine thing. And so, so I would say like, Luke Johnson and Gordon, like those two people in my life were massively critical in terms of my earlier, sort of younger growth between 18 and sort of 25. And then from 25 through to, now that I'm 40, I mean, like, Luke was only a section of that, my lifetime as well, my career. He's moved off to Australia now. But again, like very short amount of time with people influencing my life and nudging me in the direction and giving me that boost of confidence, saying like, hey, stop selling yourself short. Give yourself more credit because you're actually a lot more brilliant than you're letting yourself be.
That's what I tell a lot of guests that come on here, and you had mentioned it. What would I talk about? I ask so many people, hey, you should come on my podcast. What's it called? The long-term podcast. And they scroll through and they're like, oh my gosh, look at all these people. What would I have to add to this podcast? No, you are what matter. Whatever you are good at, that's what we're going to talk about. The long-term in you. You have a role and you're playing it. And I bet you're really good at it. And if you haven't found that yet, it's worth talking about. And I think that includes the struggle, that includes the negativity, that includes just the bad things in life. And with those bad things, you realize the good. And I think everyone can come on here. I want to surface their story and let it be known that everyone has a role in life. It doesn't matter if you're poor, rich, black, white, Asian, just gay. You can do anything. Just, I'm a firm believer of that role that is instilled in us, and we just have to keep trying at whatever we're passionate about and to never give up, right?
Never give up. Yeah. Was it never give up? Never surrender.
Yeah.
Like
never back down, never what? Never give up.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone looking to find a mentor or become one?
So those are two different, I think those are two separate questions. So like and that can be subjective too. Everyone needs something unique. Everyone needs a push in a direction, but it has to be the right push by the right people. You can't just have a mentor and expect great things. It has to be the right mentor. And maybe, and to be quite honest, those people out there, they're watching and listening. If you're looking for the right mentor, sometimes they're right in front of you and you don't even realize it. And so just stop searching for the mentor and just look sometimes to the people that are right in your circle. And you might actually just realize that someone's been there all along. supporting you.
Your
Because
dad,
sometimes
your mom,
your
your friend,
dad, your friends,
your coworker.
absolutely, Advin. Like it could be anyone. I mean, it doesn't have to be like, oh, my mentor is, blah, blah, blah from
Tony
CEO or like
Robbins,
Tony
Elon
Robbins, like,
Musk, David Goggins. These people
Yeah.
are out of reach. You can't really talk to
These
them.
guys are not your mentor. And it's like, and I don't want to be controversial and I don't want to be negative on your podcast, but that's these are the things that really get me excited. And it's like, okay, fine, I get it. I appreciate that people can have, they can call them their mentors, but are they really your mentor? No. David Goggins doesn't give a shit about me in Canada. Doesn't. That's just the truth. And I think the more people can put, and that's also something I was, I don't want to, and I said, I don't want to be negative on it, but
his message is positive.
The positive messages,
positive.
But the divider there is that positive messaging, yes. Influential on your life, yes. Sorry, I was like not talking to the mic for a second there. Influential in your life. Good thing I have a loud voice. Influential, and I keep knocking the mic. I'm sorry. So the pivot is like, okay, influential in your life, positive messaging, but doesn't know who Advin is, or doesn't know who Wade is, or doesn't know who blah 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 is.
You can't establish that relationship.
You can't. There's no true like, I listen to David Goggins audiobooks and I read his, watch his vines and watch his reels, and yeah, he's a real mentor to me. No, he's a real influencer to you. The mentor is your gym bro. The mentor is maybe your teacher. That's who a mentor is. Your professor or your coworker. Like as you said, it could just be as simple as that. So just like I think removing because I think a lot of it also is that social media drive. I need to have a mentor that's popular in social media because that's and I feel like I fear that there's more people saying like, oh, he's my mentor. Like, oh yeah, Tony Robbins is my mentor. Is he? Or are you just saying it because it's a popular choice? Like, don't just choose the popular choice. So don't choose the popular choice. Choose who's right for you. It could be your next door neighbor.
And with all these famous people that are in the self-improvement community, such as Andrew Huberman, David Goggins, even Jordan Peterson, some of them are controversial. And
yeah. I'm very into Huberman, though.
I love Huberman, man. They actually embody some people Like I know some David Goggins type people within my sphere. I know some Huberman type people because I'm in university now, and they're just as interested in science, maybe not to the extent of Huberman, where he is a professor in Stanford and he's gone through decades of research. They're still just as passionate, and it's actually a lot more engaging because you're interacting with them one-on-one. And while it's great to consume their content, you need to focus on the people around you as well, because people get so caught up on, I'll only listen to this person because they have this platform, they have this many followers. No, that person could not have social media in your life, but they could be the most powerful influence that could change the course of your career, your personal life, the way you view things. And I was listening to this podcast with Chris Williamson, and there's this like really spiritual guy that came on there, and he said that how are you can really influence a person's life, could maybe even stop a suicide. Like, and even that in itself, you could be a mentor for someone else. You could tell them, hey, you matter, that you can do it. Because a lot of people just need that encouragement of taking that jump. Just jump, man. You won't know if you don't do it. Just take the risk. And we all need that. I need that to get this podcast. My one of my good friends, Alyssa, told me, hey, it's never going to be perfect. Just start it. With even marathon running, not a mentor, but David Goggins. Like he gave me that push, and a lot of people around me told me, hey, you can do it. And some didn't believe in me, and that's normal, right?
That's okay. Because not everyone's going to believe in you, and that's okay. And I think that's a lot of, for what I do, for in terms of mentorship, I never, like I said, I never really saw myself as a mentor. I just saw myself as a guy that knows some things that wanted to help some people out. I've gone through some shit. I've dealt with some pretty deep stuff. I can maybe give, some good advice, but I never wanted, but my position whenever I've been, if as a mentor or talking to people or whoever, it's only suggestions. Hey, if this was me and I've been in your shoes, maybe I would see it this way, but I'm never going to tell someone to do something specifically. And that decision has to be up to you. I'm only giving you ideas and nudging you in the direction that I feel that you're capable of going. Sometimes it's a harder nudge, but sometimes people need those bigger nudges. It's like, hey, wake up. Stop selling yourself short. You can do this. Stop thinking you're not ready. Because if the more you continue to think you're not ready, then you're just never going to be ready.
You can instill that fire. You can activate that spark in people, and they can do that in you too. Like, wow, I can support someone. I'm going to support this person back, and it's that feedback loop, and it's never ending. And you guys build. Not only do you hone the skills of what you're trying to get better at, you're also cultivating a relationship, and that's the protege, and that's the mentor, and that's the beauty of it. That's how we get connected. That's how we survive. That is how we feel grounded and persevere despite how chaotic life can get. And
it's and I got to tell you though, as a mentor, I'm not sitting here as a mentor, just as a human guy, a human being. I think that it's important that we have to look at ourselves and understand hey, there's lots of things out there. There's lots of things we can do. We're never really committed to one thing. But if we always chase something just a little bit better, is that the right attitude to take? And I want to go down a rabbit hole on this one, but going broad spectrum and trying to be a jack of all trades, or do you want to really dial in on a couple of things you're really good at that really give you fulfillment? And that was my problem, is I was too broad. I was trying to be everything to everyone, and I can be this, and I can be an influencer, and I could be, someone like this, and I could be a coach on X, and I could do this. And I'm like, no, I'm just actually, those aren't the things that I'm good at. What I'm really good at is just being me and being a real guy to give really good advice and to just help coach people through challenging situations. And I think that goes back to saying, okay, well, when you're looking for a mentor or from a mentor's point of view, it's not a one size fits all. So you have to jive and gel. And honestly, the best relationship you can have with your mentor is probably a very good relationship of push and shove. They're going to push you. You're probably going to get annoyed by it, but it's actually best for you. You're going to push back on the mentor. The mentor is going to be challenged by, okay, how do I make sure that, I'm not controlling your life, or I'm not trying to push you in this direction at all, or I'm not trying to influence you outside of real world things. I'm just trying to help you align to the direction that I feel is best that you're needing to take. Anyway, so that's just sort of my last.
How do you see the digital age affecting the quality and depth of conversations today?
I know we talked about this sort of briefly before recording the podcast, Advin, and I think it's something that I've been always kind of passionate about, and I get on these kind of sort of rants about it. Sorry, I apologize. I'm not super used to the etiquette to be on podcasts, but I think my thought on the art of conversation and where I kind of take this is saying, just like this, the phone. We're not able to communicate properly through digital channels. And the reason that is because the reason I say we're losing the art of conversation is because what we're doing here today is we're experiencing body language. We're experiencing eye contact. We're experiencing, even just the fidgeting, and that's my thing. I'm always never ever sitting still. We're experiencing sort of our energies and our auras interacting. It's more than just text. It's more than just words. Conversation is something that's experienced. And yes, you can think, oh yeah, but I can have a really good conversation on text. No, you had a good like text. Like you can't have a conversation in text because conversation relies on attributes that need to exist in a physical space.
Well, you can
even a conversation on podcast is better than a text conversation.
You can decipher people's emotions without even saying anything, just based on their body language, whether they're smiling or not, the tone of their voice,
I go like this.
Their eyes. Yeah, or if I'm like, if I have my eyebrows down, if I look confused, right? But with text, you can't decipher that as well. The communication of human interaction is inhibited by a great deal. And so you have these people that spend their lives on social media and texting, and they do not know how to interact with people in real life. And they go with the texting etiquette, which doesn't necessarily carry out, doesn't ever transfer to real life interaction.
And that, so talking about X, like my going back, exit, crisis, and trying to, be someone I'm not being a poser, and sort of trying to embody and like follow suit with other people doing the same thing. It's like, oh, I want to do that. I want to do that. But the thing that the one place that I felt actually like, where I was going to try and influence the most was that art of conversation. And the reason, I started writing this like sort of generalized book, calling it ebook. I was going to write an ebook, right? Joined X and going to write an ebook, and I'm going to be a coach on X. And it's like, and I kind of lost myself in that journey of being a coach on X because I was trying to drive a thought process, and the thought process is the more I was on X and the more I saw all of these sort of like 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, even in the early 20s, that are trying to give like life advice and like coaching on business to people that are not even out of high school, to people my age. It just didn't work for me. And I was like, these guys do, and I see their conversation, and I see how they communicate. And I would indulge them. I would join their, hey, can we do a call? Absolutely. But on the call, I would turn it and start coaching them on the call. Like, I'm not going to buy from you, but what I really wanted to do is, here's who I am in real life. And I'm not buying your program, but what I feel like I'd help you with is just how you communicate and how that conversation is led, and how you actually try and land sales deals, and how you pivot and understand how to run a business. That's how I could help you. And I just, I'll just help people for free because it's just something I enjoy doing. But that therein is like one of the biggest things, the drivers behind that, my obsession. And I do want to start, I do want to have like, something out there about the art of conversation and not losing that, is because we're so tied now to these phones and to iPads and to just like, oh, just shoot me a DM or just shoot me something in Teams or Messenger. When you're having a text conversation with someone, you have to also completely eliminate emotionality. You can, and it's like big red X. Like, as soon as you're starting to have a deep conversation on text or Messenger or anything like that, as soon as you see it starting to get like either a little deep or it's going to get, intense. For me, I would encourage your listeners and your viewers and those people listening in, cut it off and call the person so you can hear the tone. Because you cannot have there is no sense in having a text fight or a text argument or whatever and go bouncing off the wall for 15 minutes to really probably end up exactly where you started, because you couldn't hear the tone.
There's no empathy in it. People are more likely to say certain things when on text, and when you're behind a screen and you can't hear the tone of the voice.
Yeah. It's like that Key and Peele skit. Do you see that Key and Peele skit where it's like, what?
He said that about me, but the guy didn't mean it.
Yeah, exactly.
For everyone watching, there's a Key and Peele heel
That's like
skit.
my favorite.
So funny.
It gets me
Just
every time.
miscommunication
Those guys
and-
slay me. Like, it's so funny. But that in fact, like, stop this podcast video, watch the clip, and then come back. Because really, that's actually like what I'm trying to be out there in the world to try and like battle is I want to make sure that we're preserving the art of conversation. It's more than communication. We can communicate in different ways, phone, computer, and we can communicate with body language. But the conversation piece is where I feel like we're losing that, because we're just so tied to, we don't even have like there's almost like no newspapers anymore. Magazines are becoming like, print is becoming like a dead thing. It's like how are we losing print? But we're also at the same time, like, we're losing our ability to have, that's a conversation piece right there. We're losing the newspaper. We're reading something digitally now. So we're reading the news digitally. And now we're texting our friends about something digitally. We're not reading the newspaper and having a conversation like, oh man, did you read the newspaper this morning? Yeah, absolutely. And then, for sure. And then you talk about current events that you read in the newspaper. I talk about a current event that I read in the newspaper. They're different events, but that conversation isn't going to be the same as if I text you like, hey man, how's it going? You read the news this morning? Yeah, cool. Like, it's so empty and flat and dead. Whereas like we sat down, have a conversation about whatever hot topic. And I want to be quite honest. Like, I haven't like watched the news or like read news or current events outside of the things that truly interest me, because I find it too depressing and I have like other things to deal with.
Well, the news can be very toxic to the mind. I mean,
Massively.
constant negativity.
Doom and gloom.
That's what drives the clicks. That's what drives the viewer retention, is the negativity. And news actually used to start out positive.
Yep.
But they found that the more negativity, those big clicks, those big titles of murder, of people getting just violently beat up.
Yep.
And just the fights and the taxes
or
going
the car
up.
crashes or whatever.
Yeah.
It invokes an emotional response from us. And it's like, we have human beings where we have this like desire. It's like a desire to like hear more negative stuff. Like, it's like this, it's like doom scrolling. They always talk about doom scrolling. You're just doom scrolling through Instagram or YouTube. And it's like, but the algorithms, again, like those algorithms, they see the kind of stuff you're watching that's negative, and you progressively are shown more crazy and like deeper things. So you ever go like, you're really deep into a YouTube scroll and you're like, oh man, like this is really off the chain, right? like where did this come from?
Mm-hmm.
But it's all been designed because you've watched like car crashes, and you watch someone get set on fire. You got someone, or like someone got shark attack, and then all of a sudden, now it's like all of a sudden it's like killings, and it's like, wait a second, like what? Wait a second, and it's not happening. But the conversation piece, like I said, going back to that, we don't want to lose the art of conversation, Evan, and like I'm on like a quest to make sure that we don't lose the art of conversation.
What are some skills that are essential for maintaining meaningful face-to-face conversations?
So skills that are like essential for maintaining face-to-face conversations. I think so. It's the eye contact.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure you're giving eye contact. You don't want to have like, you don't want to be
How
like.
has been my eye contact been?
Really good.
Yeah.
Really good. I think mine is kind of like around.
Mine's been kind of
like,
hurting a little bit because like I'm not used to the light. I think
looking
there's
at
like a little
the
sweat
light,
in my eyes.
should I be touching my face? In a face-to-face conversation though, without the microphones, with the camera, without the lights, one openness. You want to leave your body open. And we joked about that earlier. We're like cross-armed and like sort of, you could tell when someone's disengaged. Yeah. If you're going to have a conversation with someone, be prepared to have a someone.
Don't go on your phones.
That's
exactly. The worst thing you can do is if you're talking to someone and they're on their phone. Yeah. It's like, they're not really listening.
I'm going to break your phone if you're not, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to take it away from you. I hate it. Put this away. It's like out of sight, out of mind. Do not have your phone face up on a table, because that means that you're more interested in what's going on here and who might text you than who's sitting right here having a conversation with.
Unless there's an emergency, but rarely is that the case.
Very rare, that's very few and far between, touch wood or whatever we have to hear, touch foam, right? Few and far between, but leave this alone. This is actually killing relationships. This is killing conversation. And the reason it's killing conversation, I'm going to throw it down there. The reason it's killing conversation is because we are so tied to technology now. So talking about, etiquette and skills, active listening, huge skill, hard to master, but being an active listener, you can tell when someone's listening to you, and you can tell when someone's not necessarily engaged.
You can feel it, and you can, based on their response, did they actually add to the conversation, or did they kind of just half-ass it, heard a word that you said and built up to it without really adding anything because they weren't really listening in the first place?
Because what you get is like, ask me a question. Just ask me a question. Just like,
what's your favorite color?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which school did you go to?
Oh, what did you say again?
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah.
That there is well, that's not active listening, but that's, you can tell that they're not engaged, and that's either because they have their phone
or
on,
their minds are somewhere else.
And it's like, hey, that's okay. But also, if their mind's somewhere else, then you can control that scenario. You can, they're not ready to have a conversation, and that's okay. Don't take offense by it. It's just clear that their mind is somewhere else, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's all right.
So just reframe the conversation, park the deep parts of the conversation where it doesn't matter. Don't worry about the question and answer. So people always default, like, I'm just going to ask questions that prompt definitive answers. Like, what did you have for dinner tonight?
Yeah, lasagna. And
right.
then, a lot of it,
what did you do today? A
lot of it too is when their mind is somewhere else, that's a topic. They actually really want to talk about that. And that's why I present myself to people where I have these long pauses and I look them in the end, hey, how was your day? And I read their body language and I go, oh, how's your family? How's this? And what I found out is people actually open up to me because I don't choose the topics. They get to choose it. And for the people that their minds are somewhere else, they're usually going through something. Or if it's not heavy, it's a problem, whether it be about editing, whether it be about their test, whether it be about work. It's something that's they're fixated on, that they could use some insight that you guys could bond over. And that's a powerful thing to have in your everyday.
Exactly. So, so active listening, being open, being prepared for the conversation, putting your technology away. I don't even wear my Apple Watch anymore because I was also, so it doesn't matter if I put my phone away. I'm still tied to this, like constantly, like, oh, am I going to text? What time is it? So like, actually, the best thing to do to be able to have a conversation with someone, whether you go to the pub, or you go into the library, whether you go to Starbucks, or you go to have it here, take your watch off, turn off the phone, remove technology, and be prepared to have a open-minded dialogue on whatever comes up.
True. And be open to anything. Be open-minded. Just because that person isn't interested in what you want to talk about, it's not like they can't provide you some good, useful information. Mm-hmm. Because if you dig harder, maybe they don't like hockey. Okay. Maybe they'll like baseball. Maybe they don't like work. You guys could bond about that. Mm-hmm. Maybe they do like work. You guys could bond about that. Exactly. They play a certain video game. Maybe their mom just passed away. Okay, your mom just passed away. There's some thing that links you. And if you look at your hands, you guys, the same hands. Like, you guys bleed the same. Yep. That's something to connect about.
Yeah, exactly.
There's always something. There's something. And I like to connect on emotion. And I like to connect on the struggles, the vulnerability. That's what really adds on to a person's life, to the connections, to the relationship, to everything.
Yep. Well, you talk about that, Evan. We talk about like art of conversation. We even talked about it, for our brief pause there, for a moment. But to really, can you just quickly circle back on that? Is like, your willingness and your command of your podcast is to let people tell their story. And and I was kind of lamenting to you, like, man, I would actually probably go and I would do it differently. And it was a little bit probably disjointed because I'm not, very familiar with being on podcasts or the etiquettes and things like that. But, and sometimes you go around rabbit holes or repeat concepts or whatever, but
so what? This is your story. But this is who you are.
Exactly.
And, you could say, that person did it so much better. This person is so much more well-spoken. And that's That's them.
Yeah.
That's not you.
Exactly. And that, going back, is one of the biggest struggles I've had in my life, is that until I realized it was okay to be me, I was always trying to embody someone else. I want to try and do that. That's, there's success. I'm going to try that. I'm going to embody that. I was never satisfied. I would always look for something else. Something, like I said, I was always looking for something a little bit better, a little bit different. I was too focused on trying to be something else until I realized that I really needed to focus on who I was here. And that's perfectly okay. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. And that's been my struggle from, talk about mental health, one of your last episodes, you're talking about mental health, things like that. But it's about accepting who you are. Hey, it's okay that I don't know how to play guitar. I would love to. I try to. I was shit at it. I know how to play piano, but I quit playing piano like 12, 13 years ago. Maybe I would have say maybe 20 years ago I stopped playing piano, but I know how to play piano. Am I really great at it because I've not played in 20 years? I'm horrible at it again. But I still remember the basics. There's things that they're like, I've never played sports. Here's something. I've never skated. I've never had skates on. Never been on the ice. I've never had skis on. Never done that. Nor snowboarding. I've done snowshoeing. It's pretty tame. Was I good at basketball? Yeah, absolutely. I was tall. I was always trying to play basketball. That's something I really enjoyed, but I was afraid of doing that. Played volleyball, liked volleyball, but I hated the team sport because I could see through. I could see through it. And I was always sort of, again, I was always trying to be someone that I wasn't. And I kind of found myself like being forced in these scenarios. It's like, well, I'm supposed to be a basketball player. I'm supposed to be on the sports team at school. I'm supposed to do this. And I just hated it. And I sort of rebelled. You're going back a little bit, but I think that those experiences and those things, and I was regretting those recently, like very recently, actually. I was thinking back and I'm like, man, like I hate having regret. I should have never closed some of those doors, because who would have known where maybe I could have taken that? Maybe I were really good at volleyball. I never went to university though. Like I didn't graduate high school, and I didn't endeavor to think like, yeah, I need post-secondary education. I know this is not necessarily on topic and this is more conversation, but that's kind of the theme of today, is just having a conversation. And I feel like, there was a piece that I missed that I didn't get in deep enough with, I wanted to just quickly circle back on it, and I hope that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
Kind of, there's like sort of a formula that we're trying to go through, but there was something that was digging me, and I was like, you know what? I have to air it, because regret really can really drive people in a different spot. And I think that I was starting to really regret things, but not to like get overly consumed with regret. Hey, I chose not to. I made the choice, but I have to accept that I did. I closed those doors to trying to be, on sports. I closed those. Did I ever play hockey? No, I was never interested in playing hockey. But I made those decisions. Did I want to play, soccer? Hated soccer. Closed the door. Loved basketball, but got afraid of success. So I closed the door, because I was like, no, I'm not really not that good. And I was just like, I was sort of afraid of becoming successful. So I was almost like hold myself back on purpose. And I think that there's a lot of things that I see out there in people as well, that I kind of conversate with and sort of talk to. And it's like, hey, wait a second, I noticed the same themes there. Of like, hey, we're regressing, we're regretting certain things, and that's might be holding you back. And I think that those were things that were holding me back before, for me being able to really come out and say, hey, look, you know what? I'm not perfect. Sure, I'm a guy that knows some things, and I've gone through some life, and I've lived a pretty good life, happy life. It's been depressing. It's been ups and downs. There's always things that are going to go wrong. But until I learned that there were things that happen for a reason, like meeting Krista. Like if I had done things in high school and out of high school and gone to college or university and done different things, no chance would I have ever happened to run into Krista. 0%. It would have taken me on a completely different trajectory.
But you did. And I think everything happens for a reason.
And everything happens for a reason. So just that's what I mean about like, going back just kind of before we go back onto the conversation piece, it's like understand an acceptance of who you are as a person and just letting go of regret. Do not carry that weight. Door closed, move on. You've made a concerted decision to close that door. And so don't dwell on that. Because you can't
being
open it
anxious about that can really inhibit you from
did I make
finding
the right
your true self.
decision? And like, oh my God, you get all
I could have
stressed
done
out.
this. I could have done that. What's happened has happened. You deal with the solutions
So now
in the future.
what?
You can't dwell on the past. And while it's important to find meaning onto why that happened and just understand yourself through the past, compulsively thinking about what if I was into volleyball? I could have been a good volleyball player. What if I had gone to post-secondary? No, you focus on, okay, I met Krista. She's a beautiful, amazing wife to me. We get along well. I am a public speaker. I can speak well to people, have genuine connections. And there are so many things to be thankful for in my life. Why dwell on the past? And I'm sure you have thought about it a lot, about the past. I could have done this, could have done that. But I'm proud of you, man. I know it's just, maybe it's weird coming from a younger guy.
It's okay, no. That's why. But thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. And I know a lot of people can say the same. You've gone through hell and back, and still, life will never be perfect. As you said, there's gonna be challenges that come into your life, but you still get up. You still get up, no matter how many times you get knocked back down. You get back up, and you never surrender.
I've always said, as people like, hey, it's okay. You fall down, you dust yourself, you pick yourself back up. Even stumbling forward is in the right direction, right? And that's the extra piece that I was add on there. Like, hey, you might stumble, but as long as you stumble forward, it's still moving in the right direction.
I'm actually just gonna, what's that called? We've kind of gone over the time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's usually I want to aim for an hour and 30, an hour and 40, but I just want to keep pressing in on this is kind of the piece, the main message of this episode is you and finding your way about you, not about other people, because you do that on a daily basis. Okay, I want this is great. I want you to talk about you because you had told me that it's a struggle for you to talk about yourself because you're so much, you're wanting other people's lives to be better.
Yeah.
You forget about yourself.
Yeah.
So starting now, what are you going to do to make sure that you prioritize yourself?
I think starting now, the prioritization for the betterment of myself and to like really improve the direction I'm going is to let go of that longing for the pat on the back or the acceptance or the like or the share or the impression, because I kind of got too tied to that, to be quite honest. I mean, very, very honestly, Zad, and I look at social media and I think about ways to like hack it. And I'm not talking about like bots or like anything like that, but I look at like ways to like, I look at it as an experiment or a project. I mean, like, okay, I can get that result and like fake my way through it. And I think that I became so obsessed with that I lost a little bit of who I really was. And I became too obsessed with like, I'm going to get the likes and I'm going to get the impressions. And I know that if I do this, it's going to happen this way. But I also became overly obsessed with it. And I kind of came to that realization. I had a conversation with a friend over the weekend where
how does this relate to prioritizing others though?
So I think that because I spent so much time on social media to pretend who I am, that I'm changing the direction of like stepping back from social media and focusing on really who I am and what I can do.
Well, what about does it go the same way for when you're having one-on-one interactions with people, or is it when you say you prioritize others more than yourself, is this just about social media?
I think sort of it's broken into some different like levels there. So in terms of prioritizing other people or prioritizing myself, I would always prioritize myself on social media to try and like give a persona. But in face-to-face conversation and then, in my real, in the real world, I still want people. I still want to have that engagement with people, and I still want to be authentic with them. And I don't know if I can ever. I don't know if I can ever like not care a lot about people. I think that's the biggest problem I have is like actually giving myself time to prioritize myself. I actually just care too much about people to take a step back and look at me. But also when I the way that I think I interpret that, the way that I try and give myself me time is to go online to Twitter and Instagram and
Okay.
or X and sorry, so the long version of that is like coming around is like my me time was like this invention of myself online. But in doing that, I've lost like really the essence of who Wade is. I became, someone that's just posting like sort of anecdotal things or just, quips or quotes or things like that. It wasn't who I was, but I was on there thinking that's who I was. But to prioritize, and that's how I prioritized my own time, myself, my betterment, if you want to call it that. My improvement, my self-improvement is like, I tied that to social media.
Okay. So now you just do the things that are important to you without associating with the likes, without doing it for other people. You just do it to provide good. And if people like it, sure. If people don't, then that's okay too.
That's totally okay. And I think that I was so tied to that. Now it's just like, you know what? I'm going to take a break. If I post, I post. If I don't, I don't. I need to change sort of the attitude and the style on there because it was sort of becoming very like specific. Go to ChatGPT, get some ideas for some prompts, rewrite them to try and post them on there. But then that just loses my essence, and then it's just not real anymore. The most real interaction is right here between you and I right now, having this conversation and talking about this. You wanted to be, you talk about me being authentic. I'm not afraid to talk about, my imperfections.
Me too.
Like it's okay, if if the viewers, respond to that, that's great. I'm just, we all have struggles. I think that's the biggest piece. And I see people that have struggles, and I'm not perfect, and I don't want to call myself a guru. But I've been through the same things as some of these younger people have been through. And that's what drives me to be a conversationalist, what drives me to be a mentor, what just drives me to be a good human being.
That's great. And yeah, man, thank you. Just, you have gone through a very unique journey in life, and you have grappled with the idea of your mother, your own biological mother, dropping you off, and that need for just answers, and attention and love, and going, why would she do that to me? But still, another family accepted you for who you are, and you and your sister, and you've found your way in life, and you're very confident, and you go through life, and there are things that try to break you down, but you never let it. You just add meaning to it, and you continue to aspire for positivity. And while it's hard, because building something takes tremendous effort and destroying it takes in a matter of seconds, you still do it. And I love your idea about just prioritizing conversation and just leaving phones, and you continue to be you. And I'm proud of you.
Well,
thank
you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on the show.
Any last words to the viewers, listeners?
If you want to, experience a little bit of more about, who Wade is, you can look me up on X if you want, at It's Coach Wade. You're going to find some, unique things on there, and there's going to be a big brand shift on there. So just kind of be prepared for that. Outside of that, I'm working on, we've got, my partner and I, Zane, he works at ATS. Him and I were doing a YouTube channel. So we've got a YouTube channel that
What's
we're doing.
What's it called?
It's called the Unit Archives.
the unit archives.
Yeah, and we do like sort of history videos, and there's a bunch of videos. There's just some shorts on there about I think Amelia Earhart. We've got one about that.
Cool.
We've got one about like the moon base, and some
check
Bernie
that
to
out.
try and check it out. It's a growing channel. We're really passionate about it. It's our passion project. So just kind of stand by if you want to check it out. Check it out there. Other than that, Advent, thank you so much for having me on the show. Again, I apologize. I don't know the cadence and the sort of ethics or requirements to be on a podcast, but
it's okay.
Hopefully, your audience finds it a little bit, engaging, and and happy to come back and have a different style of conversation with you. I can get more deep into some like bizarre stories and some of the instances.
Find different topics next time.
Yeah, some different topics. We dealt with some pretty deep things today. Talking about like being dropped off and our search for acceptance and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm at the end of the day, I hope that it just comes across to your viewers that I'm very passionate about helping people.
Good.
I am passionate about caring about people and their feelings and how they can progress through life. And if I can help people in any way.
You want to approach this world with a generative drive.
Yep.
Add positivity to the world. And as always, to everyone watching, listening, there is a place for you in this chaotic world. Keep going, never lose faith, and keep it long term. Peace.
Peace and love.